Hello everyone. Last time I explained how a story is a cyclic chain reaction of cause and effect fueled by the desire of the protagonist to solve conflict. A protagonist's intent motivates his action, which produces results, and that creates new intents. That's the cycle. We'll be talking more about how the magic three things that drive a story, intent, action, and result, relate to the structure of a movie. Story structures consist of four unit types. From large to small, they are acts, scenes, beats, and shots. Acts are made of scenes, scenes are made of beats, and beats are made of shots. After all, movies, comics, and other forms of sequential art are visual mediums. A shot is an image that conveys an intent, an action, or a result. A beat is a group of shots, and this group of shots is like a micro-story. A guy wants something. He does one thing and only one thing to get it. Stuff happens. Then we move on to the next beat. What does he want next? The problem with a beat is that a single cycle of intent, action, and result might not be enough to settle the problem. If a baseball player's objective is to get to first base, then here we have the pitch, he swings and misses. That is one beat. As long as the batter has not run out of strikes, he can try again. He can have another beat. However, if the pitcher throws four balls, or better yet, hits the batter, he walks to first base. If the batter manages to knock a line drive to center field and nobody catches it, he achieves his objective. He runs to first base. If he runs out of strikes or someone catches the ball in midair before it hits the ground, he's out. So every scene is like a little game with all of its own rules and objectives. The scene is over when the protagonist wins or loses this individual section of the story. Now, some problems consist of multiple parts. There was that little story about the loan shark in the last time we were talking. Now, the loan shark had to get the money from the guy, but then, found out that someone else had swindled the money, and then the guy wound up, he let him go, let him fall to his death. He had to get information about the swindler from the bartender, and then he eventually, once he tracked down the swindler, he had to interrogate the swindler, and he finds out that the guy, that the swindler doesn't have the money. Maybe it was his boss. Finds out that the loan shark finds out that it was his own boss that has the money. And so at that moment, the swindler's friends come to rescue the swindler, and that's another scene as well. And then finally, he's got to confront his boss. So there's really about 5 separate tasks, 5 separate scenes, and they come together to make the entire story. But an act is a division of the story. It's a collection of scenes. But the end of an act occurs when there's a drastic, irreversible turn of events that results in a change in the protagonist's overall objective. So, say the first scene. The first scene is when, the guy goes for a routine debt collection. He's just going to get some money from this one guy. It results in this guy being dropped off a building and dying. And now he has to get the money from someone else. So right there, that is the end of an act. When the protagonist finds out that the guy who actually has the money is his own boss, then there's another twist. That's another major irreversible act, because originally he was getting the money back to pay his boss off, but it turns out his boss was the guy that swindled the money. We have a big twist here. That's another end of an act, and the end of an act is determined by the scene, which turns it all over. Now let's analyze another movie, like let's say The Matrix. You've got the thing about The Matrix is that there are multiple protagonists. You've got Neo, and you have Trinity, and you have Morpheus. 3 main protagonists. At least they're the ones that survive more or less through almost the entire series. Now, I'm only going to be looking at Neo for instance. If anything, Neo has his own objectives, and it's almost like each act, he has his own set of acts. Trinity has her own set of acts, and Morpheus has his own set of acts. They call these story arcs. Now, the first act for Neo, the first arc for him is he's an ordinary Joe. He works at a programming firm, has a 9-to-5 job, pretty much like any other person. And although there are a lot of really weird things that occur to him, meeting Trinity, follow the white rabbit, all these little interesting, neat things. He always has the option to turn back. Even when the agents capture him and interrogate him about Neo, they still release him. They've got a tracking bug on him, but he can still live his life. It's not until they give him the choice between the red pill and the blue pill that he has to make this very, very important decision. And when he takes that red pill, he's flushed out of the system. He is quite literally flushed out of the system. He's ejected from the matrix. He cannot go back to his regular life. That is the point of no return. That's a cutoff point. And now he is launched into a new quest to find out if he really is the one. Morpheus gives him this quest. He tells him he's the one. They think he's the guy to solve all this, to take down the machines and solve the whole problem. So now he's on a quest to find out if he really is the one. So we have many different scenes during his quest to find out if he is the one. He has the quest to see the Oracle. He goes and sees the Oracle. They try to they leave the Matrix, except that there's a betrayal by Cypher. Much of their group is destroyed. But the thing is that he still doesn't know if he's the one. This is why the act has not ended yet. There are some major irreversible changes in events, but he still wants to know if he's the one. Morpheus gets captured. He goes and as part of his trying to self-discover himself, in trying to discover himself, he still goes and he tries to rescue Morpheus. He does succeed in rescuing Morpheus, but he doesn't get out of the system yet. It's not until until Neo actually dies that Agent Smith shoots him in the hotel. It's not until he actually dies that he realizes, oh, wait a minute, I didn't die. I can't. I've been shot, fatal wound, but I didn't die. He realizes right there and then that he is the one. That is the end of, that's the end of the second act for him. That is the climax for him. And so now the rest of it is the epilogue. Now, there is there's a huge problem with the second and third act in that Neo, he's gotten the girl. He's realized he's the one and has all these amazing godlike powers in cyberspace, and he has the adoration of all these people of Zion. So we have this problem where he's got too many good things. He's got, it's too much of there's no more conflict anymore. There's nothing more that the guy wants, except for the problem that the machines are tunneling in there, right? But the thing is that his life is too much in balance. A story is only possible when things are out of balance because you have the intent of the character to go and set things right. Now, the problem I think the problem with this is that I think the characters, the creators, the Wachowski brothers, wanted to have more scenes in cyberspace because it's all about Neo, right? It's about the Matrix. And unfortunately, they kind of shot themselves in the foot by giving Neo all of these amazing powers. The problem about a story is that you can't force a story to have scenes that you want it to have. You can't necessarily force it to have more cyberspace scenes. I think what they should have done would be they should have started the second episode right where they left off, and that is not where Neo goes and flies away in has this conversation in the telephone booth and flies off. He should have cut that scene. What they should have done was they should have made it so, well, they've turned, they activated the EMP, they blew their ship to smithereens, Neo had just narrowly escaped the Matrix, and now here they are stranded in these sewer tunnels, in these maintenance access tunnels, far, far away from Zion. And now we throw Neo in a situation where, hey, Neo and Trinity and Morpheus are now in the middle of the boondocks, out in the boonies, surrounded by all sorts of dangerous shit, and they have to fight their way back. If anything, that would make for a much more interesting second episode, an episode in meat space where Neo is powerless. They could have still they could have still included that part where he, is able to control the robots or blow them up without actually being in cyberspace. They could have still ended on that note. But I think it would have been very interesting for him to fight his way back to Zion. And here's the other thing about Morpheus. Morpheus has served his purpose. He's found the one. It would be great if we could just wring a little bit more out of him by having him die, having him sacrifice himself to save Neo, and having Neo come to Zion. Morpheus is dead, and having to assume the role of